speakers, Mr. Arnold STEPANYAN from the public movement Multinational Georgia, member of the Georgian Anti-discrimination Coalition, will tell about will share with us the experience of Georgia, and Sharka Dushkova from the League for Human Rights will share the experience from the Czech Republic. Now I give the floor to Arnold STEPANYAN. Thank you.
Thank you, Andrei. So I think I saw the half people went already. I can speak about 7.5 minutes, and tomorrow 7.5 for additionally for others. That's great. So Georgi, my friend from Georgia, did a very bad thing for me. He spoke a lot of things which I have in my speech, but anyway, I'm just trying to speak a little bit about the Anti-discrimination Coalition, what we are doing in Georgia, what the problems have the coalition and just minorities, how they're in or not. I mean, just in this group work, starting with the small history of how we start work on anti-discrimination project of law. When the NGOs start, by the way, together with the government, work on the draft law on anti-discrimination, we were approximately up to 20 NGOs, and just prominent NGOs in human rights protection. And in these 20 NGOs, our organization, Multinational Georgia, worked, I mean, just on recommendation on ethnic minorities. Unfortunately, government did not reflecting on majority of our recommendations, not toward only just ethnic minority rights protection, but yeah, but others too. But anyway, as a first step, this law, I think it's okay. So what's happened after? It's very interesting that just from these 20 NGOs, 5 NGOs established the coalition called Coalition for Equality. Yes, it was right time. And but the very pity is just no minority organizations are in this coalition. So they didn't invite minority-based NGOs. On the same time, I can say that just they're very, very good in legal service, as a legal service providers, for example. But sometimes very big deficit of information on minorities problems, ethnic minorities problems in this coalition. As we understand that the situation is like that, we start to negotiate with the regional NGOs, the NGOs who are working in the regions where minorities live compactly, and we established the other one, regional coalition for anti-discrimination and justice. The difference is that just the coalition of these 5 NGOs working on monitoring of anti-discrimination law, which is very important. But there are some gaps, I think. We are not orienting only for the monitoring of anti-discrimination law, but we are orienting for the monitoring of discrimination, let's say, of minorities. And plus for the lobbying and advocacy, the problems we see, and very important is to prevent discrimination. Even more, there are things which can create the group discrimination, not just concretely personal discrimination of the individuals, but the group discrimination. And we're paying very big attention to such risks, let's say. Just saying 2 words about the work of the Coalition of Equality, which uniting, as I told, 5 NGOs, prominent NGOs in Georgia. According to their report, they received 95 complaints based on different kinds of discrimination. 19 of them were disclaimed because of lacking justification. Discussion of 5 complaints has been cancelled because court had been addressed as considering institution. General sentences were published about 2 cases. 52 of complaints are being under consideration. As for the appeals filed by Coalition for Equality member organizations, 12 appeals were sent to the court. Public Defender's Office has received 17 complaints, and just only 1 case was identified as ground on ethnicity from so many cases. I think, and just as I remember, Georgi told that public defender did not take into consideration the case and recommended to submit the case to the civic court. On the same time, if you look, for example, for the Media Development Foundation monitoring of the hate speech, for example, they captured 5 televisions, 5 magazines, and 5 online agencies. The results show that during last months, 15 cases of hate speech on ethnic and religious background aired by politicians and public officials. And you can see that I'm trying to show that there are more possibilities, let's say, to pay attention on these ethnic background problems in Georgia. The other thing is that law itself is not giving possibility to protect minority from discrimination broadly. One of the big problems of minority, for example, minorities in Georgia is discrimination of minorities is coming from the language barriers, that they're not speaking just Georgian language. And the main discrimination is in it, main discrimination cases, let's say. But this law is not, there's nothing about it in anti-discrimination law. So in the case of the discrimination on the language, the other law is working. So a law about state servants. So everybody have to speak Georgian language. And when you are not speaking Georgian language, and so you can be state servant, for example, this law is working, not anti-discrimination law. But we have the territories in Georgia where just 95% of population are minorities. That everybody speak minority language. And so in this case, it's very important, to have possibility to work in the local government with the knowledge of your local language. So, I'll tell you in 2 words about our initiative, which uniting 12 minority-based NGOs in the 4 regions of Georgia, which is working on anti-discrimination. So, specific things, what we are doing now, we're concentrating on advocacy issues, as I told. And I just want to tell just 2 words about it. One of the, main campaign was some months ago against some discrimination, discrimination items maybe in the law of Georgian state language. So there is a new draft of the on state language in Georgia, which have just some discriminative things in like creation of language police, for example, and just have been removed from the draft law, and which contain high risks within anti-discrimination framework. The law is still in a process of discussion, but I think our engagement will stop the risks which this law have before. But the second one is successful, I think, case of anti-discrimination advocacy is related to the engagement with the Ministry of Justice of Georgia. The purpose was the delivery of assistance in enhancement of legal protection status of those individuals who have been deprived of Georgian citizenship or were exposed to the threat of deprivation of their respective status. I would say that just that there were approximately 5,000 people and individuals, and the majority from these 5,000 people were ethnic minority background citizens. We start campaign against such approach, let's say. I mean, I need a lot of time to speak in details what we did, but just we switch on mechanism of international organizations, have discussions with politicians from the parliament, from the executive bodies, let's say, and as a result, Ministry of Justice and the government, they yeah, they suffer. Yeah, they're relaxed. Okay, softened, let's say, so, and gave the possibility to individuals and to our citizens receive the Georgian citizenship softly, let's say. Simplified. Yes, simplified. Yeah. The same I can say about the hate speech. We have two last cases of the hate speech from the one MP from the leading party and from the local government MP, and we ask the parliament and the municipality local government for the creation of so to start discussion about creation regulations, internal regulations, let's say, for the hate speakers, possible hate speakers. In the case of parliament, we're waiting for the answer, but in the case of the local municipality, we already received, let's say, sorry from the hate speaker, and we're discussing now with the chairman of this local government the ways how they can bring the regulations to their work against hate speech, hate speakers, let's say. How many minutes?
You have 1 minute.
Okay. I spoke 6 minutes or 14?
So 7.5 minutes
okay.
turned into 14.
Okay. So, what I can say in 1 minute. It will be very good, of course, if the NGOs, let's say prominent NGOs working in human rights protection field can be in touch with the NGOs who are working with minorities. So as a rule, the NGOs with the minority background, let's say, they have more information. what's happening, I mean, just in minority fields, and more confidence, let's say, too, I mean, just in minority areas. But in the case of the human rights NGOs, they have more experience to do as a minimum in legal consultation field. In a monitoring too, of course, they have more possibility, financial possibilities. That's another question, why minorities have no financial possibilities to do monitoring in this field. But just we can speak half an hour as a minimum about it too, why donors are not paying attention to this. But anyway, just now it's time to do this job together. If majority is not going to the minority, I think minority will go to majority.
I have plenty of questions, but I would prefer first to give this opportunity to you, you know, or let me. Okay.
I have one question to Arnold and one question to Sharka, so that she can elaborate more on what she wanted to say. Okay. Can you hear me? It was very interesting for me what you said about how the state language regulation is understood in Georgia vis-a-vis the law on state service and the using of minority languages, because it very much reminds me of the situation in Slovakia, and it's exactly the issue between the relationship between the rights of the person, of the individual, and the responsibility of the states, because we have a national minority language law.
I'm sorry, if I may allow,
yeah.
Please keep it short, if possible.
Okay. So how is it? Because you said that the civil servants are not obliged to know or speak the language, or what? They're obliged to speak the minority language.
State language.
The state language. Okay, but how can you then somehow fulfill the obligation to? So how can then the minority citizens enjoy their right to use their language, if it is embedded in somehow in a law? Because it's really a problem in Slovakia that the minority persons have the right to use the language in official communication, but the civil servants are not obliged to speak that language. So how do you solve that? And Sharka, so would you elaborate more of how you and your organization understands the concept of inclusion?
I have a couple of questions for Arnold, so please note them down. You mentioned that you tried to create the coalition and there were no minority NGOs just at the very beginning of the coalition. So I would like you to substantiate why. What is the cause? What is the reason why NGOs did not participate in that coalition for equality that you mentioned? And the related question is, you mentioned that there was only one case on the ground of ethnicity one complaint on the ground of ethnicity that you received while providing free legal aid initiative within that initiative. So what do you think, what is the reason? Is it because there is no discrimination against ethnic minorities, or lack of awareness, or the very lack of NGOs in the coalition? And the third question for you is, what do you think, because you mentioned the example of the coalition, but also some ad hoc initiatives. What are the pros and cons for each of these models? And a question for Sharka is, you mentioned the coalition and that it included various organizations. if you could substantiate a bit more about where was the voice of Roma NGOs in this coalition, because apparently because of lack of time we didn't manage to explore information on that. And the related question is, as far as I remember from the case, from the facts of the case, the initial DH and others, the argument of the school was that parents wanted like that. And indeed, the parents kind of submitted requests for their kids to study in a separate, to study in separate class. The question is, how did you manage and to empower parents to speak up, to change, to let their voice be heard, and what difficulties did you encounter in that process? Sorry for too many questions. So
I will start from the last question. What's about why? I want to clarify. There are just one coalition for equality, which uniting 5 NGOs without minority background NGOs, and we are not in. I mean, just my organization. And second one coalition is regional coalition of anti-discrimination justice, where just minority organizations are members.
At whose initiative? Who was the initiator?
We were initiators, yeah. The reasons why. First, I think just the 5 NGOs who are in the coalition of equality for equality were chosen because of they have legal service experience, as I understand. But I'm not agree with this approach. Let's say it is not enough. I mean, just have only legal service experience to be in coalition. But there are buts. I'm not agree with the and not only me, by the way. Just we're discussing it in minority organizations. And we agreed that we are not agree that such coalition have to monitor only this concrete anti-discrimination law, because of in this case the illusions will create it, like I create illusion for you now. You told me just there are no. Do you ask me there are no discrimination in Georgia? Why only one case? And that's the illusion which is creating because of monitoring of only this anti-discrimination law, but not others. And just when somebody reading report of the coalition of equality on just monitoring of anti-discrimination law, they can see only one case. And the people who don't know what's happening in Georgia, they will have illusion that just, no, that's everything, it's okay, just only one case. But on the same time, the people who are doing the monitoring, they're doing monitoring of this law, and they're doing very professionally. So what they can do, they're lawyers, and they have case, they're doing monitoring. But have no case, have nothing, let's say. So the law itself will not create many cases of discrimination, because I told you that there are other regulation of other laws. What's about? It was answered on the two questions, I think, about ad hoc initiative and.
If you could substantiate a bit about lessons learned of this coalition, what would they do differently if they started now, for example? I think
we spoke with Georgi, by the way, yesterday a little bit, and just I'm in touch with my other colleagues who are in these 5 NGOs, and I think this coalition will develop to may have chance develop to other format, let's say, to be more effective in the future. And yeah, and I think Georgi can. So what's about just 2 words about minorities languages? In a practice, minorities are using their own their languages in a local government, but the law is not giving them possibility to do it. So they are using orally, they writing the letters, etc. Armenian, Azerbaijani, Russian language, etc. But the law officially is not giving possibility to do it. So if somebody wants to stop it, they're using the law and they're stopping. Some years ago, we have practiced that just the government, for example, took from the job, let's say, the people who didn't know Georgian language, but it was politically motivated decisions. So they're using this law for the political motivated things, let's say. But on the same time, it is not only in the just local government problem. It is, for example, the same problem is in healthcare, for example, in minority regions where the medicine workers don't know state language and they need certificates now, and they can't receive the certificates because they don't know. They are good doctors but don't know Georgian language. And in the regions where just 95% of population are ethnic minorities, I mean, just maybe I can say that that's enough that they know only, I mean, local language. That's not good because other people are just coming, tourists are coming, and etc. But anyway, I mean, just that's enough. So I approximately 5-6 spheres or fields. I mean, just when the local language is in more priority, let's say, and just when the discrimination exists because people don't know state language. And it will be very good to monitor this, for example. But you are monitoring this, and you can't do anything because law is not giving possibility to go to the court, for example.